Hey all, Drake here, and welcome to the first episode of my guide to the OA on Netflix. I won't be speaking anything beyond the first episode here, so there shouldn't be any spoilers. I'm excited to get into this, so let's begin. Our show starts with a phone recording in portrait mode. Not a great start, I admit. We see a blonde woman running through traffic, climbing over the bridge railing, and letting go.
She let go.
We cut to the same woman waking up in a hospital gurney, upset that she didn't flatline. She's clearly agitated, doesn't want to be touched, and introduces herself to the nurse as
I'm the OA.
In the next scene, an older woman, Nancy, gets a call on her cell telling her to go onto YouTube. Upon watching the video her friend sends her, she drops her cell and calls to her husband, Abel. When they go to the hospital, OA looks up at them and asks who they are. Nancy takes her hand and brings it up to her face. Upon feeling the woman's face, she finally realizes it's her mom.
Mom?
Confused, the nurse asks what's going on.
She's our daughter, Prairie. But she's never seen us before. 7 years ago, when she went missing, she was blind.
They drive their daughter home, and upon arrival, there's groups of people and news crews welcoming her home. OA covers herself with a blanket to walk into the house, and we hear her repeating to herself,
That is not your name. Prairie is not your name.
Upon entering her house, she removes the hospital booties and digs her toes into the carpet. We can see for the first time a sense of relief on her face. So at this point, I should bring up the naming conventions that I'm going to be using throughout the show. OA has 3 names she goes by throughout the series. OA, Prairie, and later on, Nina. I'm going to use any of the 3 names interchangeably depending on where we are and who she's speaking with. Anyways, moving on. 2 of the officers that were assigned to her case when she went missing sit down with the family to try and find out what happened to her. We find out she was missing for
All 7 years, 3 months, 11 days.
She tells the officers she jumped from the bridge in order to get back or to get help for others, but they are already gone. When asked to clarify if they're dead or not, OA says,
We all died in times, and I can count.
In her bedroom, OA turns on her computer and tries to search for Homer Roberts. However, she can't connect to the house's Wi-Fi. While searching for the password, she finds a video camera, several tapes with her name on them, and a box full of knives, blades, and various sharp objects. It's nighttime now, so Nancy suggests that they go for a walk now that everyone else has left. On their walk, Nancy asks Prairie if she can tell her how she can see.
No. I can't.
OA hears laughter, and on an unfinished abandoned house, she sees a boy practicing parkour while another boy films him. They see OA and they tape her as she walks away. We cut to the parkour boy, Steve, having sex. The girl, Jay, goes to leave, but Steve asks her to stay and hang out.
You have a really nice body, but this isn't a thing.
To dump salt in the wound, she tells him she's into this guy in chorus, and just to
Let fucking be fucking.
As she leaves, Steve takes his frustration out on the drywall. His dad comes in, and we learn that Steve's teacher has been emailing his dad using the word bully.
Fix it.
Meanwhile, OA lays in bed making a video to Homer. Nancy knocks and comes in. OA asks her for the Wi-Fi password, and we get to one of the few missteps this show makes, in my opinion.
Phone and internet use should be monitored. They go on with doors should remain open at all times. Why don't we just go with not locking doors?
Admittedly, my understanding of long-term trauma is rudimentary at best. However, Prairie was 21 when she was abducted, making her 28 upon her return. Had she not been blind, Nancy and Abel wouldn't be able to claim her as a dependent. Now that she's an adult without any physical limitations, she should be treated as such. Yet Nancy insists on following an unknown doctor's rules instead of trusting her own adult daughter. It's because of this that OA decides to go to the abandoned house frame and ask some of the teenagers there if she can get a Wi-Fi password. It's here we meet French,
Maybe us upstairs.
Steve and Jesse again,
Fuck, it's not. You're Prairie Johnson, aren't you?
and Buck.
Give me the Demerol instead.
She asks for anybody's Wi-Fi password, and Steve, upset at the interruption, sicks his dog on her. She bites the dog.
Don't bite my dog!
and the dog becomes her bitch. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Taking her camera back, OA goes to leave, but Buck asks,
How did you get your sight?
Nancy, helping Prairie with the dog bite, specifically asks what she can do.
It would help if you would let me go online.
Again, she's an adult. She can walk to Walmart and buy a $30 phone. She could have her own internet line put in. Yet Nancy and Abel continue to treat her like a toddler. The next day, Steve is curious who Jay had a crush on in chorus.
And the Pope takes a poop and the president too, and the fancy dance banker in his three-piece suit, the big fat general and all of his troops. The truth of the matter is everybody poops.
Steve catches up with the kid he saw singing in the parking lot. This can be read a couple of different ways. The first is that he was feigning being impressed in order to punch Miles in the throat.
Man, what are you gonna do with that?
Second, he was feigning being impressed to get close to Miles to break him and Jay up, but once insulted,
I don't really want to talk to you.
he moves on to plan B, punching Miles in the throat. The way I personally like to imagine it goes is like this. Steve really is impressed with Miles singing,
Hey, whoa.
and figures Miles is new,
Hey, you and your mom just moved into Crestwood, right?
and they could really be friends. But due to a stupid mistake Steve made in the past,
You made fun of one of my friends for being gay,
Miles doesn't feel Steve could change or should be forgiven,
and it's like all good.
and Steve, angry because he feels no one is on his side, punches Miles in the throat. While recording another video, Steve knocks on OA's window. She drops her camera, showing the empty space under her bed. He proposes the idea from 1951's Strangers on a Train.
If people don't know you're connected, they can't figure out the crimes you do for each other.
He hooks up a mobile router to her computer and shows her a video for Asheville, a boot camp ordeal for troubled kids. OA agrees to help him, but has conditions of her own.
I need 5 people, and I need them to be strong, like you are, and flexible and brave.
Steve bikes them to a Goodwill to get some grown-up clothes. Steve tells OA about the girl he likes and the boy in chorus that she likes. OA, sympathetic, tells Steve he should wait until his invisible self is more developed, or...
You know, your longings, the desires you don't tell anyone about.
So say this girl was worried about my invisible side. How do I, show her I got it?
Maybe try closing your eyes. Yeah, it's boring. At first.
You gotta do a grown-up hairdo.
Quick makeover later, OA poses as Steve's stepmother for their parent-teacher conference. We're introduced to Steve's teacher, Betty Broderick-Allen. Betty advises OA,
I'm going to remove your son from this school.
OA, sensing a sadness in Betty, gets her to admit that she's lost her reason to teach.
Steve is sensitive enough to feel it, and he's angry.
If she opens up herself again,
If you want to do your job, expel the bully. Focus on the kid who sings like an angel, even though he doesn't need you.
perhaps working with Steve
If you want to be a teacher, teach Steve.
will remind her of the reason that she's lost.
He's the one you lost.
As OA goes to leave,
I didn't catch your first name, Mrs. Winchell.
I'm the OA.
with class coming back in session, Steve finds an ally in the last place he ever expected. Returning home, OA does a YouTube search for Homer near-death experience. The top link is of a college football player that suffered an accident that left him in a coma.
And as they held hands around their son's dying body, a miracle happened. He woke up.
Homer, where are you?
Getting through the Nancy police, Steve pretended to be from the FBI in order to talk to OA.
That was like the Spanish Inquisition.
Even though OA held up her end of the bargain, Steve tries to go back on his.
I got something going tonight.
OA reminds him,
But you're strong. That's why I chose you.
I chose you, crazy.
You sure about that? Midnight. 5 people. You gave me your word.
reluctantly, Steve agrees.
Yeah, don't have a panic attack.
That evening, Betty notices Steve's father and tells him she's on board to help Steve, and it's all thanks to his new wife.
I'm Mrs. Winchell.
Whoops. Caught out, Steve tells his parents she traded a mobile router to help him get out of trouble. Again, something else that happened because Nancy wouldn't treat her daughter as an adult. While they argue downstairs, OA records a quick video asking for help and uploads it to YouTube. Steve's mom asks,
What if this becomes sexual?
She doesn't have any friends, and I'm being a friend. That's it. All this sick, weird shit's coming from your brain.
he admits feeling the same way,
Because I wanted someone on my fucking side for once, and guess what? It actually helped.
Unfortunately, it looks like Asheville is on the books for Steve after all. So this entire thing could have been avoided had Nancy just allowed Prairie to go online. So what do? Well, instead of realizing they're probably smothering her and treating her like a prisoner, they go to the next extreme of removing her bedroom door. Not content with just that, they take the camera as well and touting,
The best.
finding out the woman that she sat with wasn't Steve's stepmom, Betty appears to have no problem going back on her commitment to Steve.
She's disturbed.
Unsure of what the name OA could stand for, she pauses her PowerPoint presentation of irrational numbers to search for OA. When the top result returns information on Overeaters Anonymous, you can actually see the thought, did that bitch imply I was fat? Typing in the OA, however, brings her to the video that OA uploaded earlier. Meanwhile, French is practicing for the SAT when he receives a link to OA's video from Buck. In the video, she asks for people to meet at midnight at the unfinished house from earlier.
Don't come unless you leave your front door open.
After watching the video, Buck grabs his jacket and attempts to sneak past his father's bedroom.
Michelle, you hungry?
No, I'm just grabbing my textbook from downstairs.
Steve still hasn't kept up his end of the deal as he's walking down the street while drinking a 40 with his dog. To make things worse, Jay pulls up alongside him.
You really like to kick a guy when he's down.
Get in.
Whether it's the liquor getting to him or feeling like crap, he asks her flat out why she won't be his girlfriend.
I want to get good at sex.
Fucking invisible self.
He jumps out of the car,
I am an asshole.
opens his front door, and runs to the abandoned house. Just as OA is giving up hope, she hears footsteps coming up the stairs. She's greeted by Jesse, Steve, Buck, and French. She tells him that she can't continue without 5 people. Steve confuses this for spite,
Come on, away. Don't hold a grudge.
and after he says,
I'm tired of all this shit, away.
they hear another set of footsteps. Can only imagine what went through the 4 school students' heads as they see Betty coming up the stairs. But instead of busting them,
I left my door open.
OA invites her to sit beside her. As OA reignites the candles, she begins.
I'm going to tell you my story from the beginning.
She asks everyone to close their eyes and to imagine being her in the story that she's going to tell.
I imagine with my eyes open.
Could you close them for me then?
Once everyone has their eyes closed,
I was born in Russia in 1987.
What?
they were probably expecting her story from when she was captured and not from birth. She tells of her father's mining company making a lot of money very fast, and due to this, the Russian mob, the Voy, required payments. And as she recalls memories from very long ago, were treated to a lovely violin piece over the opening credits.
You asked me how I got my sight. The better story is how I lost it in the first place.
This is where the story truly begins. She has memories of St. Basil's Cathedral and the Grey Muska River. Each new mansion built on her enclave was a new fortune for the likes of those that had drilled for oil and dug for coal. Her mom died while giving birth,
It was just my father and I in a big, lonely house.
and she suffered from night terrors,
They had smells in them and sounds that were sharper than light.
of which she would wake up with a nosebleed. In one, she's trapped in glass underwater. She tells her father these dreams were as real as he is, and Mr. Azarov vows to help Nina get rid of these dreams. He has them taken to a river with a thin sheet of ice on it. Mr. Azarov grabs a crowbar, opens up a hole in the ice, and tells Nina to come over. When Nina objects,
Единственный способ победить холод.
Nina walks over and slips into the icy river. After a few seconds of shivering, she stops, as if she's realized something.
My father taught me about bravery that day.
It's not that it wasn't cold anymore, she just has nothing to fear from it. The dream never came back. Once school started for Nina, her and the other recent rich children got picked up on a special bus. One morning, she felt uneasy about being on the bus, but says nothing. Her friends are talking about some movie that makes you think too much about death. I honestly have no clue what movie is suitable for a child that has a boy shoot himself. But anyways, Nina's nose starts to bleed. After hitting the water, we see this is the exact moment she had dreamt about. She sees a light under the bus and tells her friends that she may be able to make it if they swim deep. She swims through the hole in the windshield and starts to swim upwards. As Nina swims towards the sunlight breaking over the water's surface, OA informs us that they were meant to be a message to their parents.
And the message said, "You are powerful businessmen, to be sure, but you are not all powerful."
That day, every child on that bus died.
Including me.
As a school bag sinks to the bottom, Nina lays in sparkling water surrounded by stars. An older woman, Katoon, reaches in and helps Nina out. She asks Nina if she wants to go back. If she does, she will know great love, but it will be very hard. Without much thought, Nina asks to go back. However, because of how difficult things will be, Katoon will take Nina's eyes.
فأنا لا أستطيع تخيلك ترين ما يتواجد أمامك في الحياة.
And as Katoon grabs Nina's eyes, we see darkness. Mr. Azarov is performing CPR on Nina. Overwhelmed with emotions, he holds Nina close to him as he weeps. Finally, even though her eyes were wide open,
I can't see anything at all.
So, I expected having more to talk about here than I actually ended up with. I think that's because the first couple episodes set up the rest of the series. Once the show progresses, I'll have a lot more to discuss. What I'm going to do here and going forward will be to first talk about the episode itself as if I have not seen the rest of the series. If you want absolutely nothing spoiled, you should close the video after that. If you don't mind some minor and possibly one or two major spoilers, then feel free to stick around until the end. If you want to skip right to the section that may contain spoilers, jump to this time code. Otherwise, let's move on. As far as first episodes go, I actually found this better than most. The benefit of recording for a service like Netflix is that each season is recorded and posted all at once, so quality is rather consistent throughout the season. The first major question this episode, as well as this season overall, asks is Prairie telling the truth? At one point, Nancy asks her if she's been hearing voices again.
Are you hearing voices again?
I'm not hearing anything.
There is several instances of doctors advising of full-time psychiatric care.
You did say, Abel, the doctors in St. Louis recommended that she be committed.
Then there's Nancy treating Prairie as if she has a disability. At this point, it is possible she's making up a grandiose tale of her childhood because, in reality, she was abused by her father. Her father hurting her, causing her to go blind, but she remembers it as a bus accident because the truth is just too much to bear. If this is the case, how can we believe anything else she's saying? Not just here, but going forward. For now, there's little to suggest else, so I'm just going to assume her story is true. At this point, I'm going to be speaking as someone who has seen the rest of the series. If you don't want anything spoiled, close the video now. Otherwise, I'll proceed. So, if you've seen ahead, we know her story is true. Therefore, we do have to accept the world of angels, magic, and otherworldly beings. Now, does this mean everything she tells us is true? No, but I can elaborate more on that at the end of episode 2. Just a couple of things of note here. What OA sees in the video cam and the box of hidden blades both get explained in episode 2. Also, her getting Steve's dog obedient is something that's explained in season or part 2. But this is the first instance of her speaking with someone from the animal kingdom. Stylistically, I love how the entire first part is set with a bluish or grayish filter, and some very soft lighting with many shots out of focus. Finally, I find it somewhat interesting to think that at this time, all of the boys had just started playing Q Symphony. So that was it for Part 1, Episode 1 of the OA. This episode is very much just set up for the rest of the series. Personally, I find Episode 2 and on much more engaging. I'll hopefully have that put together at some point soon. If you watched this through, thanks! Feel free to like and subscribe to ensure you see Episode 2, and feel free to comment and share as well, and have a great day. Peace.